I'm a Muslim, I'm a pharmacist, I'm UK born, I've always voted Labour, never voting Labour again due to their refusal to call a ceasefire. Definitely not voting Conservative either. OK, sir or madam, thank you. You are not alone. We'll get more into that in a moment. Now, as The Guardian points out, this does track back to an interview Sir Keir gave on my show back in October at the Labour Party's annual conference in Liverpool. Now, it was just days after the October 7th Hamas attacks. Here's my full exchange with Sir Keir on Israel's right to defend itself in the light of those attacks and other actions, so listen carefully. But I started off by asking Sir Keir what a proportionate response to the attacks would be.
I think the first thing I have to say is responsibility lies with Hamas. This is cold-blooded murder of men, women, even children. It is terrorism, and Israel has the right to defend herself. And there are ongoing situations with hostages, and Israel has the right to do everything that it can to get those hostages back safe and sound. And therefore, I'm very clear, Israel must have that, does have that right to defend herself, and Hamas bears responsibility.
A siege is appropriate? Cutting off power, cutting off water? Sir Keir?
Well, I think that Israel does have that right. It is an ongoing situation. Obviously, everything should be done within international law, but I don't want to step away from the sort of core principles that Israel has a right to defend herself and Hamas bears responsibility for these terrorist acts. And I would call on all responsible states, particularly Middle East responsible states, to call this out for what it is, and to stand with the world in condemning, utterly condemning, these actions by Hamas.
Let's turn to Ali Milani, who's national chair of the Labour Muslim Network. And I must start by your reaction to this story on the front page of the newspaper, that canvassing of Muslim votes and voters is going on. Your reaction. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Nick. Thank you for having me. I feel like I've been warning about this for months now. In fact, I did so on your show not long ago.
I remember talking with you, yeah.
Yeah, that this is a serious problem. This isn't a situation we wanted to find ourselves in, absolutely. The Muslim community has been one of the longest and most loyal serving communities to support Labour anywhere in the country. In fact, in 2019, 83% of registered voters who are Muslim supported the Labour Party. But we are now in an absolute crisis point. We are in a position where Labour is about to dismantle one of its longest serving and most loyal voter bases anywhere, and it was entirely avoidable. So I am dismayed at this story, but absolutely not shocked.
How was it avoidable?
Well, we could have started, first of all, by not having the interview that you just played. And I've got to commend you, because I think your questioning was absolutely clear, that there was no question of ambiguity. And Sir Keir's LBC interview was one of the most damaging things that's happened in this crisis, suggesting that cutting off water, fuel and aid to Palestinian civilians and children in hospitals was hugely damaging. The position on Palestinian recognition has been shocking. The suggestion that recognition of a Palestinian state is somehow in the gift of other states and part of a process where Israel is recognized unilaterally as it should is shocking. But also, it's the way that Palestinians have been spoken about throughout this crisis. We've had nearly 10,000 dead children, 26,000 dead people, most of whom are civilians. And Muslim communities are watching these people live, the dead pictures on their social media feeds and on the news. And what they're seeing from the Labour Party is a complete dehumanization of these lives. There's no empathy, there's no sympathy, there's no recognition of the absolute tragedy that's coming out of the region. And they're looking at themselves and saying, why would we support a party that doesn't support our lives?
How can you not see what's happening and not do anything? And also you're preventing the people in your party from saying anything, because different people were saying supportive things before, and now they've changed their stance, and now they're just quiet, or now it's just, what does Israel have on him that he cannot see humanity? And I know you're saying Muslim vote, but for me, it's just humanity.
Yes, I mean, the story is about Labour specifically looking into the hemorrhaging of Muslim votes, but you're quite right that the attitude to Gaza will also be alienating traditional Labour supporters of all backgrounds, religions and ethnicities. What was the tipping point then for you? I don't know that you're being necessarily fair in saying that people who spoke out more have gone quiet, but it's possible you're paying more attention than I am. I know that 8 members of the front bench resigned their posts in order to back the SNP's King's Speech amendment explicitly calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire. If he did that now, would it be too late?
No.
No.
No, because I'm still a Labour supporter.
Yes.
I'm not a Keir supporter.
Okay.
And he has to go, and somebody else has to come in, who has to have some humanity in them. That's for me what it is. If today he asks for ceasefire, he asks gets the charities back in, he gets water switched on, he gets that's fine. I'll be back on your side. No, there's nothing this current Tory government can do. Because I've seen them, what I believe is they're worse. It could be even worse than that. But if I have to punish myself by getting Tories back in, to let Keir know that do not take my vote for granted, then that's what I will do. That I won't vote for Tories.
So you won't vote at all.
But I won't vote for somebody else.
I think the whole. Keir Starmer and the Labour Party's whole position since the October the 7th, horrible October the 7th Hamas attacks on Israel has just been a complete botch. Look, since the October 7th attack and Israel's response, everything that the Labour Party and its values oppose has been on full display in Israel's actions in Gaza. Now, whether that's anti-Palestinian racism, whether that's Netanyahu's government's fascism, whether that's tyranny, injustice, which comes with the impunity that Israel seems to have from the US and the UK, and whether that's the genocide, which only last week the ICJ ruled that there might be a plausible case here. Keir Starmer and his leadership have avoided opposing these things, Labour values, which Israel is guilty of at all costs, that instead has come up with botched
hang on a second.
After botched fudges.
Hang on, you had me until, in terms of my understanding of you, until you said Labour values, which they've got wrong from, which Israel's getting wrong.
So Labour values, Sheila, are to oppose. Labour values are to oppose racism, to oppose fascism, to oppose tyranny, to oppose injustice. Instead, what we've had, and on your show, this is what kicked off everything. Not your show specifically, but on LBC. When Keir Starmer came on and made a complete mess of what he was saying and clearly supported a siege.
What should he have said? Well, he says not, but what should he have said?
We heard what he said. He said that when Nick Ferrari asked him whether a siege is justified, he believes this is Israel's right.
And he subsequently said that he was answering the previous question.
Yeah, but he might have subsequently said that, but then the very next...
I know, and I'm just reflecting that.
That very day, Emily Formby went on Newsnight and repeated pretty much the same. David Lammy the next day went on another show and repeated that. And then when there was a backlash, that's when Labour started to change that position.
And just before I come on to the degree to which you fear this or know that this has harmed Labour's support base, in the simplest terms, and nothing about this feels simple, but in the simplest of terms, what should he have said? Not that morning to Nick, but what should he have said about this issue in those early weeks?
Well, he appeared to defend Israel's right to deny Palestinians access to water, food and fuel and medicine. I mean, that's a very simple thing that he shouldn't have appeared to defend.
All right. And beyond that, because we've dealt with that just now, beyond that, what do you think he should have said and done since that he hasn't?
But beyond that, he didn't deal with it. He went on to gaslight Muslims on an epic scale by, instead of apologising, instead of claiming he shouldn't have said that, he went on saying he didn't mean to say that, he meant to say something else. But that is barely obvious when David Lammy and Emily Thornberry also repeated the same things on other shows as well. So it's not as if it was a one-off botch. It was a clear policy there until they realised that it infuriated hundreds of Muslim, and not just Muslim. I think it's unfair to say that it infuriated just Muslims.
No,
it
that's true.
infuriated anybody who stands up for any form of social justice.
Well, I'm not sure you can say that, but it certainly infuriated more than Muslims. Yeah, you're right. Not least I've heard it on this programme from people who aren't Muslims as well. Can I ask you then, what damage do you think it has done to the strength of the Muslim vote for Labour?
I think it's done a significant amount of damage. We've just heard from Ali Milani, who's representative of Labour Muslim Network, saying that he's embarrassed to speak to people, represent Labour. In my position myself, I'm struggling to convince my family members who are staunch Labour supporters and voters and have been all their lives to actually vote Labour again. This is my own immediate and extended family and friends. We've had hundreds of Muslim councillors write to Keir Starmer expressing their concerns. I'd be surprised if they even got a reply back to say that what the position is, what they're dealing with. Instead, we keep on getting these reactionary events. So the last couple of days, as this story came out last night, we've been seeing how certain people might have changed their tune a bit and tried to do it, but it shouldn't take an opinion poll to stand up for human rights, which is what people are saying that should have been done.
But there are two sets of human rights in this story, aren't there, as well? And I imagine, well, there are.
Are they?
Israeli citizens?
Well,
hostages?
Yes, and they should be released. But what's that got to do with the killing of 25,000 innocent Palestinians? I find that hugely offensive. Why are you differentiating? Why are you differentiating?
Please stop shouting at me. Please stop shouting at me. Please stop shouting at me.
What's the difference between Israeli citizens and Palestinian citizens? They all have the same human rights. That's just cruelly offensive that you differentiated human rights into two categories.
Can I speak? And can you stop shouting at me? I was not differentiating. I was doing the polar opposite. I was saying there are two sets of human rights at play in this story. You know that's true.
That's utter rubbish. Utter rubbish.
So
human
Israelis
rights
don't
are the
have
same
human
for
rights.
all. I just find it astounding that you bring it back to that. There's two different sets of human rights. Everybody should live side by side together. But whatever the actions of October the 7th, whatever the actions of October the 7th, it does not justify the indiscriminate killing
Mish, you're
of
shouting
tens
at me
of
again.
thousands of people.
You're shouting at me again, and you are, I'm afraid, misunderstanding the point I was making a few moments ago. Of course, the rights of Palestinians matter. They matter as much as everybody's human rights. You were saying, focusing only on that, and I was making the point that when a politician who wants to be the Prime Minister is making a statement or taking a party position on a subject as complicated as the Middle East and as complicated as Israel and Gaza, he or she has a complicated position to take. Now, the point I'm making is he or she has to consider the human rights of Israelis as well, perhaps especially in light of October the 7th. That's all I'm saying. It's not to denigrate the rights of Palestinians. Of course people want that bombing to stop, but it isn't just going in one direction. The damage and the hurt and the death is much worse on one side, but we can't ignore the other side as well, the civilians on the other side as well.
Sheila, every sane, ordinary person is appalled by the terror being inflicted on Israeli hostages at the hands of Hamas.
Yeah, that's all I was saying. As well as so I don't know why you lost your temper with me.
No, but as well as the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank at the hands of Israeli soldiers and settlers. Every human life is sacred and should be protected from violence. These are basic principles that we should expect from all our politicians, not at least the man who wants to be Prime Minister. Instead of coming on your show and defending the right of Israel to hold a siege, and so on. It's a basic human principle, and we should expect that of the leader of the opposition. It's obvious that he doesn't believe half the stuff he says, hence he makes up policy on the botch, and that's what he did on Nick Ferrari's show.
I'm 47. I'm very middle class. I've got all that sort of piece there. I'm very lucky and privileged in that way. And I voted for just about everybody, since I was able to vote. But I think having children and getting slightly closer to my faith, which is what the children have done. I've got twin girls in year 9. It's made me sort of look at how I vote a lot more carefully. So not necessarily just about what's going to benefit me. And we're not going to talk about the private school thing with Labour and tax and whatever. But my children are privileged and they're able to do that. So again, I don't love Labour, but I did vote for them for the last 2 times. Okay. And the reason I was looking at it again was that my children have a great quality of life, but the vast majority of children in our country don't. So what is it that's going to make a difference? Now, I do volunteer work and I fundraise and I give my time, but what's really going to make the difference is my vote. And I look at Labour and they just have better policies. But I think they're a little bit vague at the moment. So my view was I'll give them my vote because I think they will make things better. But now with the way that Starmer has behaved, and my religion or my faith or who I am is all based on you look at people who are around you, and if you can help them, you should do. There is a piece within our religion which says it's your duty to protest and march if you see injustice. And I've been on 4 of the 7 marches, and my girls have been on 2 of them, partly because I wanted to show them this is what a free country looks like, and you can do, this is what women are able to do, and this is what civil rights looks like, so it's very important. So where I'm going with this is that the problem is with Starmer is that human rights lawyer, and he came out with an absolute clanger on, obviously on LBC. And I don't believe for a second he said the wrong thing, because it did take him a while to correct it. And what that says to me...
But I've given you some inside information on that, which is that they were...
yes, that they called and said...
Immediately. I mean, but while he was still in the building, they were saying that clip's not fair, that clip's not what he meant. And then he did immediately... reverse it publicly the next time he was offered an opportunity to do so. He categorically reversed his position on the withholding of power and water from Gaza. But I'm not for a minute pretending that he didn't say the words.
So I'm not just basing it on just that point, though that was really shocking for me.
Yes, it was, because it's a war crime.
It is, but also, the whole image of Labour is that they stand up for, the average person, or the people who really can't, who aren't privileged and don't have all those advantages that I know that myself and my children have. That was really shocking to me, and it just didn't ring true. And then there is the whole piece around the ceasefire, and I find his response up until has been really muted, and it just reinforced, unfortunately, my idea that as much as I want Labour to be that party that takes care of those who do not have the opportunity or the means, to take care of themselves, I just don't believe him. And I just don't believe that when he gets into power, because he's going to be the next Prime Minister, that he actually cares about the minority vote, because the Muslim vote is a minority vote. I appreciate there are constituencies where it will be much more difficult for him.
You're not feeling the way you feel because you're a Muslim. You're feeling it. What you've expressed is a humanitarian position.
Yes, but being part the humanitarian piece, the piece around looking after your community, the piece around looking after people who are not as privileged as you, and this is not. No,
I understand that perfectly.
Religion.
You know I do.
That is very much part of my religion.
Yes.
And that is core to our religion. Now, people have lots of views on Islam, but for me, it is about respect and family and community and looking after each other. And I just don't see that from him.
Do you think it's a calculation? Do you think it's a calculation, Farah? Do you think he is prioritising the votes of other people over the votes of you?
The Muslim vote isn't going to get you elected. It's not going to get it. There aren't enough of us.
Well, it's going to win some seats. It's enough to swing some seats if you hemorrhage enough votes in places like Bury North or Wickham, and in fact Wes Streeting's constituency as well would fit into this category as well. It might be enough to swing if people stay at home in their droves. It's enough to make a difference.
I don't think people are going to stay at home in their droves, and I'm going to vote for another party, not the Tories.
No.
Don't worry about them. No, I'm going to vote for the Greens because
Can I ask you a trickier question? You've expressed yourself. An awful lot of compliments coming in for you and Sarah. Actually, it's almost as if people feel the quality of the callers is higher than the quality of the presenting on the programme this morning. I can't possibly let that be sustained for much longer. But when did it become an issue? Because you couldn't. I don't think anybody denied Israel the right to respond violently and lethally to the October the 7th attacks, and the slightly mealy-mouthed use of the word proportionate, and I'm only criticising myself there, not anybody else who used the word, using the word proportionate without being able to define what it meant, but the sense that there was a point at which it would become too much, there would be too much death, there would be too much response, that being the point where one would want more explicit calls for a ceasefire. Where was that point for you? Do you know?
Well, the thing is that I grew up with friends who are Palestinian.
Yes.
One of my best friends is Jewish. Her father's a great supporter of Israel. So I have quite a broad view on these things. So for me, I felt that this was coming over years and years and years. Sure. And the point where I think my views on Labour in particular changed, and when I thought that they needed a ceasefire,
yes,
was pretty much a couple of days into it, because
that quickly.
This isn't something that has just suddenly happened